Hi, folks. We're Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. And thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the attitude of Indian Australians, that is, Indians of genetic origin, Indians born in Australia. Now, I had a meeting with some of them recently, and I just wanted to sort of explain and talk about that meeting and the views they had as to the issues of the day, the geopolitical issues of the day, such as migration, and just cover that because it's really illuminating. It says why Indians are amongst the worst possible migrants you could ever have into particularly a white Western country. But given the vast numbers that are piling in and how the Australian government is obviously globalist cabal control is on its knees grovelling and gagging to get as many Indians into Australia as possible, then the situation is only going to get a lot worse. Now, what was interesting in this meeting was there were three of them, and they were Australian-born Indians, so they spoke with Australian accents. Four, actually, because one came a little bit afterwards. So three men, one woman, but they were talking Australian, so there's no Indian accents or anything to worry. They didn't arrive yesterday. They've been born in Australia, and so their views are how Australian are they? Because they're Australian citizens, they're born here. How Australianised are their views, if at all? And this was the sort of interesting side of it, I suppose. They're very much in favour of Indian mass migration, and they have relatives, and they have wider family, like third cousins and fifth cousins. They have wider family members, people in the village, and they use patronage as a huge corrupt third world dirty patronage is a huge part of their culture in India. So there are people who are owed favours, and their wider family wants to repay those favours by getting them out of India and into a first world country. Now, they were quite prepared to concede that pretty much everyone in India wants to come to a rich white Western country. They sort of weren't, that wasn't in dispute. They sort of nodded, okay. But now their approach was, well, India is a poor country, firstly because white people stole it all. That's very much part of it, deeply embedded in their psyche, which is, of course, nonsense. India was a patchwork of warring states when white people arrived, and per capita income of white people, even in the 1500s, was still well ahead of anything in India. India had a huge population mass that didn't exist in Western Europe, and because of that, economic measurement of the day measured one living person equaled 1 unit of economic output. So only because of that and their huge population mass was India viewed as wealthy. It wasn't wealthy on a per capita basis. It was still quite poor. Certainly a lot poorer than Western Europe, and a lot less productive even then. This is before the Industrial Revolution and before the mercantile age had come along. And Western Europe pulled away from India and China and places like that at a rapid rate during the mercantile age, and then it absolutely took off into the stratosphere with the Industrial Revolution. But anyway, they readily conceded that India is a poor place. They readily conceded everyone in India or in the whole subcontinent wants to get the fuck out of there and go to rich white country. That wasn't in dispute, but they believed that what came along next was that they believe they are entitled to it, and the level of entitlement isn't just what we should have it. Number one is they believe that the world should, give or take, have the wealth should be spread equally and evenly amongst the people of the world. Why should that happen? Well, just because it should. They also believe, and these were upper class, Brahmin type folks I was talking to, they believe, and then this is where the entitlement comes in, they believe that their entitlement to go anywhere they want in the world, rich white countries, of course, being the top of the list, the entitlement they have to go anywhere in the world is just how it is. That is how the world is ordered. They are at the very top of the Brahmin people. They are at the top of this sort of philosophical Socratic type structure, and they should be entitled to go wherever they want in the world to any rich country because of their social superiority and the mere prestige of their existence, as they perceive it, at least. And then by extension, people they owe favors to or cheer squads from India that they want to bring out with them are also entitled. And they believe this to this extent where, in the same way that you and I might believe in gravity, for example, or that we believe that night follows day, or that they believe it that much, because the look on their face when I said, well, what sort of entitles you to this? And, all heads turn, they look, well, that's just how it is. I mean, we are entitled. It's no question about it. Nothing to talk about. Nothing to discuss. The laws of gravity apply, and that was the sort of one thing. Remember, these are born in Australia, so they're not from, they didn't come out from India yesterday. So now the woman rather, well, I don't know, she'd be about 30, I suppose, was wearing an Indian national costume, and one of the men had a turban and a very Indian-looking sort of outfit. The other two, again, rather Indian sort of dress. It wasn't like a local sort of dress type setup. So they still looked foreign, even though they spoke with Australian accents. And the type of jewelry they had, the way they sat, held their heads, and the manner, the delivery, the process of logic that they applied, very Indian. So they believe that anyone who disagrees with Indians coming to Australia must somehow be a moron and a Nazi at the same time. Why wouldn't you want their socially prestigious, their philosophical godlike demigod presence in Australia? Australians can bask in the light of their demigodness, and this was very much again part of their thinking. Now, in terms of, the issue with, say, getting, having to work, this idea that they should have to work, given, again, their social superiority, given that they, do they have to work and produce anything, create anything? Well, of course not. Their social prestige alone is the issue here. And I've come across this many times before with upper class Indians. So they arrive in us, or their family arrives in Australia, gets gifted affirmative action DEI government jobs, gifted affirmative action DEI college degrees, and goodness knows what, and everything is it. But once they move out of that DEI affirmative action sort of bubble, and they have to go openly head to head compete with the local people, they can't, and they fail, pretty much all the time. And this they view as racism. Well, if I'm doing so well here, but I can't do well there, must be because they're being racist there, rather than I'm being giving DEI or AA handouts on the beginning or on the other side here. So they've got quite a perverted view. They believe themselves to be entitled to be at the apex, and the time is not far away when they believe they will be in a sufficient majority in Australia to actually directly dictate how the body politic will operate. And they believe they are naturally the superior people who should be managing all these white peasants. And that was rather chilling. They didn't express it in quite such forthright terms, but it was very much where they were coming from. So in sort of wrapping up here, this was the nature of the conversation. They don't believe they have to be productive or produce anything. Their mere social status is the gift they give to Australia as they perceive it, and mixed with the attitude of entitlement, with the idea of sending back to the village of their ancestors for brides and husbands. Again, they viewed that as the law of gravity. Why wouldn't we do that? The mere concept of being spiritually or culturally diluted in any way is something that they can't even comprehend it, and they have the view that the cultural purity and racial purity is absolutely paramount. Racial purity, get the husband or bride from the village of their ancestors. Cultural purity, it must be someone who's come directly from India and been brought up there. Again, as I've mentioned many times before, the idea of the son or the daughter marrying a locally born Indian even is unthinkable, because of the cultural dilution. And the idea of marrying outside of the racial diaspora is again just I mean, it's beyond unthinkable. And the bringing of the husbands and brides from India is again, it's a law of gravity. And they look with, they look quite puzzled. Why do I not see it that way? Why? And, and apart from being, you silly, you said. So I even said, well, what do I know about these things? I'm just a silly white man. And they all in unison sniggered and laughed at that one. Oh, fuck. So we're not looking down the barrel here of a bright future with Mass's vineyards. Far from it. Far from it. And somebody in government needs to wake up to this. Maybe it's what the globalists want. It's a way to eradicate whitey in there. And this idea too that the great replacement, whites are being replaced with the Indians and so on. They scoff at that, and did as we were talking. They absolutely scoff at Nazi talk, fascist talk. But then in the same breath say, but anyway, we are the naturally superior people. It is only logical that we will be at the apex of this new society, where the white people will be our minions, in the same way that the people at the bottom of the social caste stack in India are the dead bodies on the street that you walk over. That's their perception. And make no mistake, that's the future they have in mind for us. And it's not pretty. And if the white people who are bringing all these Indians in think, well, we'll get a free pass because we gave them all these handouts. No, it's not going to work that way. You too will be one of the, the feudal serfs there to serve your culturally and spiritually superior Indian masters. It's not a bright future. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.